Hey y'all, it's me Marty. Welcome to another video. In this video I am going to show you different types of tarp shelter setups. Okay, I'm still at the rest area in South Dakota. It's the same day, Saturday morning, and doing another video here. So I want to learn different ways that you can use a tarp to make a shelter. And there's all different ways. So I think I have like 10 of them that I'm going to try. Again, so a lot of my videos, I make a video as I'm learning. So I share with you what I'm learning. Okay, so I'm going to tell you each different type of setup. And you know, you might be asking the question, why do you got to know how to set up a tarp shelter? Well, if you like to hike, backpack, camp, it's good to have a tarp with you in case of emergency, you know, survival or emergency situation, or if you just want to camp. It's a neat way to camp instead of having a tent. It's a little simpler, it's a little easier, and it's kind of a neat way to do like cowboy camping, I guess, or roughing it, more in the outdoors in the open air. Probably not the best in the summertime, though today is really nice. It's in the 50s and breezy, no bugs. But spring, fall, and winter, a tarp would be nice because there's no bugs or critters to get you. But maybe you're not a wimp like I am. Anyway, okay, so the first one I'm going to show you is this. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's kind of a challenge today to set up a tarp because it's really windy. Okay, the first one I'm showing you is a lean-to. Okay, and it's probably the easiest and most simple tarp shelter you can make. So the first half of these shelters I'm going to show you use a ridge line. Okay, so a ridge line is taking a paracord or any kind of line or rope or whatever and tying it to two trees. Now you need to pull it really tight. There's different knots you can use. There's fancy knots you can use. I don't really know knots. I'm just kind of learning knots. You know, a square knot. I know a fisherman's knot. But there's different ones you can use. So it's good to learn those knots, especially when you want to make it tight. So this is kind of a challenge in this wind, but hopefully it'll work. Anyway, so if this blows over while I'm doing it, you know why. Anyway, so first thing is to put a ridge line up, okay, between two trees. And then, one knot I did learn to do just 10 minutes ago is a pressing knot. And it's pretty simple. You just take a little piece of paracord or bank line or whatever, and you just tie a loop. You just tie it a knot, so you have a loop. And then you put it over the ridge line, and then you thread it through itself, like 2 or 3 times. And then you tie it to the tarp on the 2 corners. So you've got 2 pressing knots up there, okay? And what's neat about those, if you pull on them to one direction, it'll loosen, but you can slide them and it tightens on itself. It's really neat how they work. I don't know a lot about pressing knots, I'm just learning them, but it worked really good for this. Anyway, so I have the top of the tarp tied with 2 pressing knots, and I actually have one right here too, just because it's so windy. So if it wasn't so windy, this would be more straight, but right now it looks like Batman or something because of the wind. But this is a square tarp. This is my USMC 7x8 tarp that my wife got me at an Army surplus store. And yeah, it's camo on one side, and I think it's coyote brown on the other side. And it has a whole bunch of attachment points. It's a neat little tarp. I'm hoping I can do all these tarp shelters with this one. I do have a bigger one I might use. I'm not sure. But we're going to try it with this one. So, yeah. So anyway, you tie it on your ridge line with the 2 pressing knots, and then you tie down below, you stake the 2 corners. And I actually put a stake in the middle too because it's so windy. And you can leave a gap like that if you want air through it if it's hot. If we're talking like winter time, you'll want to stake it down tight in the back. Okay? A couple of pros and cons of this kind of shelter. It's really easy to put up. And it gives you a lot of room under here. This is only a 7x8 type tarp. And I have room in here. I could set up a bed. I could have my gear under here. And the neat thing is I could have a campfire right in front here. So it's a good simple tarp and it works good. It doesn't give you a lot of protection during a guess, really, but it's really just one side. You have to make sure that you do it the right direction. Wind is blowing, well, most wind blows west to east, but today it's kind of going all over. West is that way, or no, west is that way actually. I should have it turned, but this is how the trees are in this rest area anyway. Know which way the wind is blowing. Yeah, also there's no floor unless you have another tarp and put it on the ground. And yeah, so it's a good simple tarp, or good simple shelter. The lean-to. Can you see me? Well, this one didn't work out as good as I planned because it's so windy. But basically, this one is a lean-to wedge. There's different names for it, but that's the main one I've seen. Basically, I just took, it's a lean-to, but what I did was I pulled the back stakes in a little ways, about 2 feet, and I pulled the front end over the ridge line, and I staked it out in 2 places. But it's so windy that it's not working out as well as it should. But basically, what the lean-to wedge does, you have a little bit less room inside, it's a little bit lower, but you have a little roof on the front that's slanted down, which is good if it's raining or wind or weather or whatever. So basically you have the back wall still, but now you have a little bit more roof and it's slanted down in front. That's what it's supposed to look like. It's just so windy. I don't know if all of these are going to work today, and I'm learning, but this one is the lean-to wedge. Also, my ridge line, I need to learn to do knots so I can pull it really tight. I have it pretty tight, but it's kind of sagging too because of the wind. Anyway, this is another good simple shelter, like the lean-to, but a little bit more on the front end here. A little more shade, a little more shelter, a little less room inside, but you still have quite a bit of room. The lean-to wedge. You know, I have to note also, I'm at this rest area, and it's a nice grassy area with trees, but there's a sign right next to me that says pet area. Yeah, so I might be kneeling in dog poo. You know, but you're all worth it. Okay. Now this tarp shelter is called the A-frame. Basically, it's just over the ridge line, and you just stake out the 4 corners. I also use my pressing knots on the ridge line again to pull it tight. You know, I really hope there's no poop on the ground. Anywho, this one is pretty low profile because of my tarp being small. This is a 7x8 tarp. I hope I'm not talking too loud. I'm talking loud because of the wind. But anyway, this is a 7x8 tarp, so it's a pretty low profile A-frame. But if you had a bigger tarp like a 10x10 or 12x12, it would be a pretty roomy one. This one isn't real roomy. It's big enough to sleep in. You could have your gear in here, your pack and everything. It's better than a lean-to because it covers 2 sides. It still doesn't have a floor. Of course, you could put another sheet, another tarp on the floor in here. But this covers 2 sides, so it's way better as far as protection from rain and snow and wind. But yeah, this is pretty low profile. It's about, I'm about 2.5 feet right here. It's pretty low because of my small tarp. But it's 8 feet long that way. So, but again, a bigger tarp would make a bigger A-frame. So yeah, the A-frame shelter. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's poop. This is fun. It's really a challenge in the wind to do this. But that's good. You know, a challenge is good, and it's good to know how. I mean, if you're out in the woods and you got to put a shelter up in the wind, you got to know how. It's kind of tricky because the wind really wants to take the tarp. And yeah, my nose is running. Okay, on to the next shelter. Okay, for this one, this one is the A-frame tent. All I really did was I closed in the one end down there. Okay, I just brought in the 2 stakes, so it's closed in. Now you got 3 sides closed in. So what you could do is you could bring in these front 2 stakes also and close this end in. Then it's completely 4-sided tent. You know, you'd be completely closed in from the elements. You know, storms and stuff. And if you put another tarp on the ground, it'd really be nice. Okay, a couple of things. It's really windy, so these tarp shelters I'm setting up aren't perfect. I'll do this again on another day, but it's pretty windy today. But it's a good example to show you that, you know, it takes some work, but you can do it. Now, you know, I have more stakes, and I would stake down all the sides so it's all down tight. A bigger tarp would work better for some of these, especially this one. You would have a lot more room in there. But also, if let's say it's really cold, the smaller space in there would be easier to keep warm. And again, if I could get my ridge line tighter. The other thing you could do on some of these, you could use trekking poles. Okay, I have 2 trekking poles here. I was going to use for a couple of these different ones. You know, you could put a trekking pole right here. You could do that with an A-frame, one on each end, or just put one on the end down here. That'll give you more support. If you use trekking poles, I don't use them too much. My wife and I usually use hiking sticks that I made, but I have trekking poles too. I actually got them. We have a couple at home, and then I got these specifically to show doing different tarp shelters, because there is a couple that are really good if you have 1 or 2 trekking poles. So that really helps too. Again, if it wasn't so windy, this would look better. But this is an A-frame tent with the end closed in, and if you close in this end, it's really good. But in the wind, it's kind of hard to do all that. Anyway, yeah, I'm kneeling in poop. I just know it. Okay, so this one is basically called a fly, or a floating A-frame. Basically what I did was I raised my ridge line so it's a lot higher. It's about 4 feet off the ground now, and I have the 4 corners staked just like I did an A-frame, but I used paracord so the corners are off the ground. So this kind is up in the air more. So you have more room to move around in here. You know, you could sleep in here if the weather's fair. Have your gear in here. Kind of like an A-frame, but it's up in the air and it's floating. And you have more room. Now this isn't really protecting you from bad weather. I mean, yeah, you got 2 sides, you know, the roof covered, but it's open around and on the ends. But in fair weather, this is a good one too, and it gives you a lot more room under here. Again, it's really a challenge today doing these, trying to learn tarp shelters in the rain, in the wind. But it's a good challenge. Okay, now I'm going to show you a variation of the fly. Oh, this one would be good to cover your tarp, or this one would be a good one to cover your hammock. So you can put a hammock in here from tree to tree and you're covered. This is the plow point shelter. Probably one of the best and most popular shelters you can make. This is one of my favorite shelters. So basically on this one, you don't use a ridge line. Take my hat out here. You don't use a ridge line. All you do is you tie a paracord to one tree. The wind is kind of blowing it down. You tie a paracord to one tree and tie it to a corner of your tarp. And then you stake out the other three corners. This is one of the best ones because it really gives you a lot of protection from the weather. It's basically covering three sides. The back, you know, three sides really, the back and the two sides. Yeah, there's no floor unless you put a ground cloth in here. None of these have floors I'm showing you today. But if you have another small tarp, like I have another small one I can put in here, then you'd have a ground too. But this covers three sides, and if it was really bad weather, the wind is blowing it down, you could untie that paracord from the tree and pull it down to the ground, and then you're covered on all four sides. Yeah, you're kind of closed in, but in a bad storm, you could do that. Another thing you could do, and this is where a trekking pole comes in handy. So I could go like this. Whoop! My trekking pole isn't blocking here. I just got this one too. Anyway. Oh, I gotta tighten it. Okay, I get it. I get it. Okay, there. Now you got even more support, and it holds it a little higher if you have a trekking pole. Or you could just, you know, if you have a hiking stick, or just cut a stick in the woods, down tree or something, you have a little more support. Actually, you don't even need a tree if you have a trekking pole. If you have a trekking pole, you can put your trekking pole there, and now take that paracord and stake it down to the ground. You know, again, if a bad storm comes up, just pull your trekking pole down and pull your paracord down and stake it right to the ground. You can actually stake it from inside basically a tent. This is almost a tent at that point. So yeah, this is one of the most popular. It's called the plow point. I think there might be other names, but I like this one. You got a lot of room in here. You could sleep in here. You could have your gear in here. This is a 7x8 USMC tarp, not real big, and two people could sleep in here in an emergency. So yeah, the plow point. Okay, so this one is the teepee tent. You can't really see it because I'm inside it and it's small. So I know that doesn't help much. But basically, this is kind of like the plow point with the one end closed in. You know, basically you stake a couple corners, like the two back corners, and then maybe two side corners, and then you put a trekking pole or a hiking stick in here in the middle, and then you stake out the front corners. Now if you want a door, don't stake them out too tight, leave a doorway and you can actually close it. The reason this is so small and you can't see it is because this is a small tarp. This is a 7x8 and it's not square, so it's kind of hard to do a teepee tent without a square tarp. It would work. It's really small. There's room enough in here I could sleep and I could have my gear in. I don't have it staked down all around, but this kind of tent is probably, a tarp shelter is probably the best for bad weather, because you're closed in all the way around. You know, and you could put tie outs on the outside. You could do a ridge line and have it secured to a ridge line, stuff like that too. Now if you had like a 10x10 square tarp or 12x12, a teepee tent tarp shelter would be really good, and you'd have a lot more room. But yeah, there you are. Is that 7? I was going to do 10 or 12, but there's a few of them I just can't do because this tarp isn't big enough and it's too windy. So, but yeah, I did 7. It was fun to learn how to do these, and not perfect because of the wind, and you know, I'm a beginner. I'm learning as I go and just sharing with y'all. But yeah, 7 tarp shelters for different needs, really, in different weather. I think the plow point is my favorite because it wasn't hard to do, and there was roomy, and it closes in 3 sides. I think the plow point with another tarp on the ground inside would be a really cool shelter. And all you got to do is close in the front end in bad weather, so, or at night, whatever. And again, you could stake it down more. I want to get another tarp. I've heard of the DD hammock tarp. It's like 9x9 or 10x10, something like that, and there's tie outs all the way around it. This doesn't have too many tie outs. It has a lot of snaps because it goes onto another tarp, I think. But I love this tarp. My wife got it for me, and it's got some little pinholes here and there, and it's, you know, older, but it's neat because it's a military surplus and it's been used anyway. But yeah, I'd like to get like a 9x9 or 10x10 sometime, and be able to do a little bit bigger shelters. What else was I going to say? I think that was all I was going to say. Oh, because like the plow point or the teepee tent, you could, you know, with like the DD hammock or other hammocks that have a lot of grommets or tie out places, you could tie it down really airtight almost. And you want a little bit of ventilation, but anyway, I'm just learning. I just think this is kind of fun. Just ideas, different ways to use a tarp for a shelter, for hiking and backpacking, camping, bushcraft, emergency situations, survival. Just kind of neat. Anyway, hope you like this video. It wasn't perfect. There's a lot better ones out there showing the different angles and doing it right. And it was a windy day to do this, but it was also a fun time to learn to do this in the wind. So anyway, if you like this, please give it a thumbs up. Watch my other videos and subscribe if you haven't. I hope I can encourage or inspire, or at least help you smile, help you laugh. Yeah, I'm sitting poop. Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot of dried poop in here from dogs. So I think I'm gonna go change my clothes, and I think it's lunchtime. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.